safety layer. And in the same way that trust and safety, at Twitter under the previous management was highly biased in one direction, as the Twitter files, I think, have abundantly shown, I think there is now mounting evidence that this safety layer programmed by OpenAI is very biased in a certain direction. There's a very interesting blog post called ChatGPT as a Democrat, basically laying this out. There are many examples. Jason, you gave a good one. The AI will give you a nice poem about Joe Biden. It will not give you a nice poem about Donald Trump. It will give you the boilerplate about how it can't take controversial or offensive stances on things. So somebody is programming that, and that programming represents their biases. And if you thought trust and safety was bad under Vijaya Gadde or Yoel Roth, just wait until the AI does it, because I don't think you're going to like it very much.
I mean, it's pretty scary that the AI is capturing people's attention. And I think people, because it's a computer, give it a lot of credence. And they don't think this is, I hate to say it, a bit of a parlor trick. What ChatGPT and these other language models are doing is not original thinking. They're not checking facts. They've got a corpus of data and they're saying, hey, what's the next possible word? What's the next logical word? Based on a corpus of information that they don't even explain or put citations in. Some of them do. Neva, notably, is doing citations. And I think Google's Bard is going to do citations as well. So how do we know? And I think this is, again, back to transparency about algorithms or AI. The easiest solution, Chamath, is why doesn't this thing show you which filter system is on, if we can use that, a filter system? What did you refer to it as? Is there a term of art here, Sachs, of what the layer is of trust and safety?
I think they're literally just calling it trust and safety. I mean, it's the same concept.
It's what we talked about this before.
Why not have a slider that just says none, full, etc.?
That is what you'll have, because I think we mentioned this before, but what will make all of these systems unique is what we call reinforcement learning, and specifically human factor reinforcement learning in this case. So David, there's an engineer that's basically taking their own input or their own perspective. Now that could have been decided in a product meeting or whatever, but they're then injecting something that's transforming what the transformer would have spit out as the actual canonically roughly right answer. And that's okay. But I think that this is just a point in time where we're so early in this industry where we haven't figured out all of the rules around this stuff. But I think if you disclose it, and I think that eventually, Jason mentioned this before, but there'll be 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 competing versions of all of these tools. And some of these filters will actually show what the political leanings are so that you may want to filter content out. That'll be your decision. I think all of these things will happen over time. So I don't know. I think I don't know. I don't know. So, I mean, honestly, I'd have a different answer to Jason's question. I mean, Chamath, you're basically saying that, yes, that filter will come. I'm not sure it will for this reason. Corporations are providing the AI, right? And I think the public perceives these corporations to be speaking when the AI says something. And to go back to my point about Section 230, these corporations are risk averse and they don't like to be perceived as saying things that are offensive or insensitive or controversial. And that is part of the reason why they have an overly large and overly broad filter, is because they're afraid of the repercussions on their corporation. So just to give you an example of this, several years ago, Microsoft had an even earlier AI called Tay, T-A-Y. And some hackers figured out how to make Tay say racist things. And, I don't know if they did it through prompt engineering or actual hacking or what they did, but basically Tay did do that. And Microsoft literally had to take it down after 24 hours because the things that were coming from Tay were offensive enough that Microsoft did not want to get blamed for that. Yeah, this is the case of the so-called racist chatbot. This is all the way back in 2016. This is like way before these LLMs got as powerful as they are now. But I think the legacy of Tay lives on in the minds of these corporate executives. And I think they're genuinely afraid to put a product out there. And remember, if you think about how these, chat products work, it's different than Google search, where Google search would just give you 20 links. You can tell in the case of Google that those links are not Google, right? They're links to off-party sites. If you're just asking Google or Bing's AI for an answer, it looks like the corporation is telling you those things. So the format really, I think, makes them very paranoid about being perceived as endorsing a controversial point of view. And I think that's part of what's motivating this. And just to go back to Jason's question, I think this is why you're actually unlikely to get a user filter as much as I agree with you that I think that would be a good thing to add.
I think it's going to be an impossible task.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is then these products will fall flat on their face. And the reason is that if you have an extremely brittle form of reinforcement learning, you will have a very substandard product relative to folks that are willing to not have those constraints. For example, a startup that doesn't have that brand equity to perish because they're a startup. I think that you'll see the emergence of these various models that are actually optimized for various ways of thinking or political leanings. And I think that people will learn to use them. I also think people will learn to stitch them together. And I think that's the better solution that will fix this problem. Because I do think there's a large non-trivial number of people on the left who don't want the right content and on the right who don't want the left content, meaning infused in the answers. And I think it'll make a lot of sense for corporations to just say, we service both markets. And I think that people will be fine with it.
You're so right, Chamath. Reputation really does matter here. Google did not want to release this for years, and they sat on it because they knew all these issues are here. They only released it when Sam Altman, in his brilliance, got Microsoft to integrate this immediately and see it as a competitive advantage. Now they've both put out products that, let's face it, are not good. They're not ready for prime time. But one example, I've been playing with this and
a lot of noise this week, right? About Bing's
tons, search, just how bad it is. We're now in the holy cow. We had a confirmation bias going on here where people were only sharing the best stuff. So they would do 10 searches and release the one that was super impressive when it did its little parlor trick of guess the next word. I did one here with, again, back to Neva. I'm not an investor in the company or anything, but it has these citations. And I just asked it, how are the Knicks doing? And I realized what they're doing is because they're using old data sets, this gave me completely every fact on how the Knicks are doing this season is wrong in this answer. Literally, this is the number one search on a search engine is this. It's going to give you terrible answers. It's going to give you answers that are filtered by some group of people, whether they're liberals or they're libertarians or Republicans, who knows what, and you're not going to know. This stuff is not ready for prime time. It's a bit of a parlor trick right now, and I think it's going to blow up in people's faces, and their reputations are going to get damaged by it because you remember when people would drive off the road, Friedberg, because they were following Apple Maps or Google Maps so perfectly that it just said turn left and they went into a cornfield? I think that we're in that phase of this, which is maybe we need to slow down and rethink this. Where do you stand on people's realization about this and the filtering level?